moving into the last team of this video for the AFC East, the New York Jets. Before we get into free agency and the draft quickly, we have them they were 7-10 last year, and the narrative we have is Aaron Rodgers enough to get them over the hump? So quickly, when we look at free agency, they bring in a reliable backup in Tyrod Taylor. They sign Mike Williams, who could be their wide receiver 2 if he stays healthy behind Garrett Williams. They massively overhauled the offensive line, which I think was one of the biggest things of free agency. I think in terms of how good units improved from an offensive line standpoint, the Jets have to be the most improved on the offensive line, which I think was great for Aaron Rodgers and great what they're trying to do. Tyron Smith, Morgan Moses, bringing in John Simpson. You also bring in Hassan Reddick, and they signed Javon Kinlaw, or am I tweaking?
No, yeah, they did.
I'm thinking of Javon Hargrave. I was like, he's on the 49ers. So, but anyway, they brought in Chuck Clark as well. They re-signed him. But with that being said, I think the main issues the Jets had last year was wide receiver depth, which I still think they could struggle with a little bit, but I do see them probably making a play for a wide receiver at the deadline if everything is going well. And they massively overhauled the offensive line. So, if healthy, the Jets probably have one of the best O-line units in the league.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, another underrated thing that they really addressed this offseason that you got to love is, look, they said no more questionable backup situations. If worse comes to worse, we at least have Tyrod Taylor, who's shown he can win a game. He can be a productive starter when he needs to step in. I think that's a massive win for the Jets. Obviously, you don't want to be thinking about that being the situation forced, right? The hand that was forced. But if it is, at least you feel a lot better about it this year than you do with Zach Wilson. But I think regardless, the bottom line is if that was to happen again, I think a lot of hopes and dreams are shattered in New York and New Jersey. But at least you have a better contingency plan than last year. At least that has to be addressed, right?
Well, unfortunately, if Aaron Rodgers goes down, it just feels like the season's over. People are getting fired. I just feel like Saleh has really underperformed with what he's had. I know Zach Wilson has been his quarterback, but I don't know. It's just really tough. I feel like Breece Hall could have a really big year. But going into the draft, before we get into just, general narrative talk, really, as we talk about insurance plans, drafting Olu for the future to be that future left tackle for you. And then taking Malachi Corley, while I don't necessarily love I guess my thing is, if they don't make a play at the deadline and Mike Williams is hurt, I know these are all random scenarios, but the reality is, Mike Williams is very injury prone. Malachi Corley is your 2 or Alan Lazard is your 2. I don't love it. I don't love it at all. And we're kind of the Jets don't have this tight end who could act as their wide receiver 2. So gets real thin real fast. I think they're going to make a very, very heavy play for Devontae Adams at the trade deadline. I don't know if you guys follow the Pretty Ricky, the dog insider on Twitter. And I know how this sounds. But he's been on a lot of stuff before it happens. He was saying that the Jets made a big play for him. And yes, that makes me sound really bad because oh my God, you're getting your info from a Twitter dog. But he was on a lot of shit before I was seeing the insiders tweet about it. So Pretty Ricky 123 or something like that. But anyway,
I have to address this real quick. I have to address this, dude. I've been seeing this source all over random pages recently, and I'm like, they have to be getting trolled. Swear that this dude has been on his game, bro.
He'll tweet about shit months beforehand, and he's not one of those accounts that just tweets out a ton of generic information that could be true, and it just happens to end up being true. He'll really only tweet about something if it's on the move.
Does anyone know who he is, or is it just an anonymous account?
All I know is his account has gotten shut down a couple times, and he'll always make jokes that Schefter and Rappaport are trying to get him shut down. But I don't know. He has to be connected somehow because he has the scoop on shit. But anyway, with that being said, Devontae Adams, very likely, in my opinion, to at least be attempted to be traded for at the trade deadline. So yeah, it'll be very interesting. But overall, narrative talk here. the Jets roster, while it is improved and while they do have a great defense, Aaron Rodgers has to be the guy to get them over the top this year. Because if it's not coming from Aaron Rodgers, where is it coming from? Because we saw what the Jets can be. We've seen what the Jets can be with bad quarterback play and a great defense. So even if you put Tyrod and get average quarterback play, we know that they are not going to be real Super Bowl contenders. So do you think Aaron Rodgers would be enough to get them to the Super Bowl?
See, and here's where it gets interesting, right? I just want to, this is how I'm looking at it, right? And again, I don't want it to be this to come off negative. I would just want to come off extremely realistic. I don't think there's enough people asking themselves, myself included, right? Because whenever we talk about the Jets, it's like they're for sure Super Bowl contender locks, right? And I say that. But the more I think of it, the more things I consider, like, with quarterbacks, you can see that difference of the arm strength a lot sometimes in just like 1-2 off seasons, right? Like, bang, it just kind of something they lose it as they're getting older. So we realistically really haven't seen Aaron Rodgers so almost at this point, it's like a year and a half, 2 years. So what I think is interesting about that too is not only is the damage right to the leg, to the ankle, all that. It's more than anything. It's just that on top of the residual just getting older. How much is Aaron Rodgers still going to look like vintage MVP Aaron Rodgers? Because I know this wasn't a long time ago, but I still do think it's something worth considering. Where you hear everyone talk about Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, and it's like, yeah, well, it's Aaron Rodgers. It's like, yes, it is, but this is an old version of Aaron Rodgers. Is he still going to have that same juice? That is very much to be determined.
I mean, I guess you could make the argument that like he was still like pretty good in Green Bay, like when he only had like Adams or like towards the last, like he was still pretty good outside of the year that he tore his Achilles. So yes, I understand what you're saying, and I'm leaning. I agree with you. I agree with you that it is a lot more of a wild card than I think people are expecting, because I don't know, man. I don't know. I think, and we'll talk about this with other teams too. I think a big one that we could talk about, and we will when we get to the division, is the Falcons, where Kirk Cousins, like, this is an older guy who tore his Achilles. Like, we do not know if he is going to be back full strength. But I think I would be willing to put more money on the Jets than I would the Falcons going into this year. But
no, absolutely.
I mean, I think Aaron Rodgers can get them over the top. I think because the Jets haven't even got to the playoffs, it's like, I don't know. Like, I can't. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to bet that they're going to go to the Super Bowl, but I could see them being one of the contenders.
No, absolutely. Like, all I was going to say is, like, don't get me wrong, though, Jets fans. I want to be clear. You guys have an amazing roster. It's complete for the most part, really, minus the receiving core at this point, from top to bottom. I mean, it is a truly, like, thought out, well put together roster. But now it's a matter of, can Aaron Rodgers be that same guy, and can he stay healthy? That's really all it is this season, Jets fans. So now it's to be determined.
Any final thoughts on the AFC East, Dobbs?
Final thoughts is that there's definitely a lot of narratives in the AFC East, and I can't wait to see how they shape out this year.
100%. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been team previews for the AFC East. As always, if you don't know ball and want to know ball, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, let us know in the comments what narrative you think will be true and what narrative you think is false, or just come up with your own narratives in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great rest of your night.